Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg-Shaped. And today I've got kind of a blast from the past, but now someone that is sparkling in the future. I've known this man for a very, very long time. We went to school together, and then as we leave school, we actually ended up at the same uni doing different things. And then I watched his career go in all sorts of different directions, representing Scotland at Sevens and on the Sevens circuit. We then bumped into each other in Hong Kong once or twice, and we'll probably keep those stories to a minimum. And now he finds himself in New Zealand doing a job in a place that Scotsmen really shouldn't get to, I don't think, but he's very, very highly regarded. He's just launched his new venture that I'm sure we will talk a lot about, being endorsed by so many big names. Ardi Savia, Dane Coles, they are all over it, and they all reckon that this man plays a big, big part in their performance. He is all about performance. He is all about getting the best out of himself and out of others. I'm absolutely delighted that he's been able to give me some time. I'm in Scotland. He's in New Zealand. Our accents might dip back into the good old days of Gala. Both our accents have changed for various different reasons that we might have a little giggle about too. So with any further ado, welcome the one and the only Mr. Davie Gray. Hello, sir.
Thanks very much, H.A. What an intro.
Oh, I'm still can't believe it when I see things. Speak to Tony Walker, you speak to Richie Gray, changing the world, and now we've got you out in New Zealand doing great things. How's life?
Very good, thanks, mate. I'm just over here, Wellington, New Zealand. Been here since 2006, so life's good. It's just chipping away at a few things and staying busy and enjoying life. So it's all good, mate.
So your current role is with the Hurricanes. What is it you get up to there?
So I look after the S&C side of things at the Canes. So been there since 2009. So I've had a good stint with the Canes lads. And so just really looking after all the physical prep. And there's two or three of us in the strength and conditioning department. I changed my role slightly about a year, or maybe just under a year ago. So for about 10 years, I was classed as the head of physical performance, but as we'll probably come on to in this conversation later on, I took a little bit of a step back in my role. I work with the Canes now in a 0.6 capacity, and I've been developing some other business interests on the side. So I've kind of gone from heading up the programme, being involved in lots of meetings and planning and strategy, which was really cool, but you sort of at times get a bit stale from that, so drop back and a bit more on the tools again, which is cool, back in a bit more coaching and working on the grass with the players and not having those extra responsibilities of being at every meeting, and which ties up time pretty quickly. So that keeps me busy sort of day to day, really.
It's one of those weird things that the better you get at something and the higher you go in it, actually the less you do the thing you were good at.
100%. I often think kind of like your line of work in teaching, that the best teachers always, they seem to get promoted, and before you know it, they're a principal and they're never actually teaching. And I think it's a little bit like that in rugby, whether you're a coach and you might start off as an attack coach, or maybe you start as a skills coach and you go to attack and you're on the grass and you're working with players and you do a good job, and all of a sudden you're a head coach. And there's more relationships with the CEO, the board, sponsors, media duties, overseeing the programme, managing staff. And that takes up a lot of your time, and you actually end up coaching less. And it's not quite to the same degree I found in my role, moving through the sort of strength and conditioning side of things. But certainly there is demands outside just the gym, the grass, that take time and effort to do a good job. And it's got lots of cool things about it, but just after 10 years of that, I was quite keen just to freshen up and just get back on the tools, really, and give me time to explore some other things that I'm interested in as well.
I love it. Get back on the tools. You're like me. You grew up probably waking up early a Saturday morning to try and watch Super Rugby, and then we would talk about it, training. Oh, I saw this move. I saw them do this. Have you seen Umanga? Have you seen? And now or not now, but you found yourself there. Were you pinching yourself, or was it just that this is just the next step for me?
Oh yeah, at the start it was surreal, and a genuinely sort of similar situation. I remember Saturday mornings, sort of Sky TV back in the day, it would often just show one Super Rugby game a week, and sometimes I remember flicking that on a Saturday morning. And it might be something like the Reds versus the Chiefs, and I kind of like wasn't really that interested. This would probably be like late '90s, you know. And then one week you might flick on and it was Hurricanes, Blues, or whatever. And it was like, oh, the Hurricanes were, for some reason, they were my team. I don't know why. It was probably the players they had, you know, the Cullens, the Lumus, the Umangas. So I kind of was at home in Gala. I'd never been to New Zealand and sort of supported the Hurricanes. And then I came out to New Zealand with a mate of mine. We were in Wellington and went to a few Hurricanes games and then came back to Scotland. And so sort of was kind of following the Hurricanes. And then, you know, within probably 6, 7, 8 years of that, actually walking through the door to work there and walking in and you're actually working with, you know, Rodney Solialo and Andrew Hoare and Jason, you know, guys that were at All Blacks and big names in the Hurricanes. And you had to definitely pinch myself a couple of times. And so it was kind of surreal, but you just got to get the head down and work hard, earn respect, and the boys' trust, and then you're away, you know, and you start making a really positive influence on them as well.
I would imagine you've already named them. They're not going to suffer fools. If you weren't good at what you did, if you were all talking, no action, they're not going to get better. They're not going to buy into what you're doing. How do you get somebody, you know, big names? How did you get them on side? How did you gain their trust?
Yeah, well, I think what you've touched on there is the key thing. Really, is building that trust, and you can do that in different ways. But looking to establish that relationship's key. If I walk into the gym and I just tell, you know, let's say it's Conrad Smith, you need to do this. You know, as a guy who's played 100 games for the Hurricanes and 50 All Black tests, he's probably got to go, who the hell are you, you know? But if you build trust and you try and have that relationship where you're demonstrating that you're almost like a resource, you're supporting their development, then players they'll come to you. And it doesn't take long if you start working closer with one player and you do a good job. Word gets around the change room pretty quickly. Like, this guy's knows what he's talking about. And I think Kiwis are, as a general, they're not. They're more doers than talkers. So they respect people that if you get in there and work hard, most New Zealanders will love that and they'll give you a chance. But they'll see through the guy who comes in and talks a good game but doesn't do any of the work, you know. So it was a real learning experience. You know, I've learned things over the whole 12 years that I've been involved with this team, and there's cultural differences. There's players from all different walks of life, from different backgrounds. You got to start to understand how they impact their personality and how they see you, how that might impact communication and the feedback that they give you. But ultimately, I think just like anything, if you do a good job and the player understands that you're there to try and help them fulfill what they're trying to achieve. It's not necessarily about me. I don't go in the field and have to play the game. I'm just a facilitator to allow them to get better. And as soon as you get that type of relationship, I think that's cool. That's the key really to any development is that really.
There's two things in there. One is ego. So you've kind of said you're there to support them. So what does that do for your ego?
Yeah, well, I'm really driven by impact. So I'm not. I don't need to feel valued by being on the back pages of the newspaper or having loads of TV coverage. I'm motivated by feeling like I'm getting recognition from the people you're working with that you're having a really positive impact. So for me, that's what pumps my tires up. That's kind of like my ego getting stimulated, and everyone's different. You know, it's been funny that like the last few days since I've sort of started my business, I've been on social media a bit more, trying to like promote it. And my wife Janine's been helping me. I had no idea how to use Instagram. You know, I've been on Twitter for years, and I think I had like one tweet I'd sent, and you know, I had a Facebook page that's got photo on it from 2002 or something like that. You know, I just don't. I'm not a big self-promoter. I don't really need that. I'm sort of quite internally driven, and I can go home at night and think, well, today I did do my best. I've tried to give my best, and you know, if it's good enough for people, that's good enough. If it's not, it's not. But it does give me that sort of self-satisfaction as well.
So the second bit to it is there's an image, especially, well, probably anybody looking at New Zealand, it's rose-tinted specs. New Zealand's the best. They've got the best players. They've got the best resources. They've got, and anybody who's been and you're in it, that's not necessarily true in every aspect. But one of the points is, oh, but you've got the best players. But sometimes the best players are not the ones who want to work hard. So you must have had cases of players who had all the, you know, physical skill, the physical attributes, but there was just something missing. You don't have to name a name, but is there somebody that you look at and think, my input to that, I got that kid, I got that guy, and that then led to them being able to reach their potential?
Yeah, like I certainly think so. Like there's some good examples of players I've worked with who I feel, and they've maybe said to me in private around the impact I've had on their career. And it's not just me. There's lots of people that have helped them, not only in terms of S&C or coaching, but in their life in general as well. And like I think a really good example, and I think he'd be happy with me sharing, is Nani Laumape, who was with us for a few years. I had a really great relationship with Nani, and when he came down to the Hurricanes, he joined us from the Warriors, and it was his second ACL injury, so he'd coming off the back of this, you know, quite a significant injury, and he was probably wasn't in the prime shape that he knew he could be or wanted to be. And I remember, and again, there's lots of people supporting the guy, so I'm not claiming the credit for it, but I remember sort of sitting down with him and we were talking about his personal vision and his drivers and his motivators, and he, you know, I'm not going to say what they were, but they were quite emotional. You know, you could tell it was from the heart, and it was almost as soon as you spend a bit of time and recognise that, flicks a switch on him and it flicks a switch on me, and from that point on, we still had a really great relationship. But just keep asking the guy, are we on track here? Are we doing this? And before you know it, there's an athlete who has dropped 7 kgs body weight, who's doing extras in his own time, who buys his own walk bike to have in his house for his days off, you know, cleans up his nutrition. He's in early doing his rehab and stretching, and starts to become this professional. And you know, and you saw his career really shift over a period of 3 or 4 years. And so I think examples like that are really powerful, and how you can work with players. And it's not necessarily about the strength and conditioning. It's not necessarily about the weights program you've written. It's kind of going back to that first point. It's about the relationship and having mutual understanding on what the player wants to achieve and why he wants to achieve it. And you're almost just a facilitator, giving him the physical stimulus to help him attain his dream, really. So now Nans has moved on he's off in France now, and I hope he continues to push himself, because he's got some great aspirations in the game, and he's a phenomenal man on and off the field. And so it's really special when you see people like that. That's quite rewarding for me. It's not something that you need to shout from the rooftops or have a TV camera in your face. It's just, you go home and you think, man, I've hopefully made a little impact in that guy's life in a positive way.
Class. Love it. Looking back, could you have seen what the job actually was? Did you think the job was, I'm going to get him to lift that and run that, but actually it was personality, it was relationships, it was social skills?
Definitely. That's been the biggest learning for me. You know, I've been sort of involved in strength and conditioning, and, you know, probably since 2002, 2003, and it sort of it's a bits away with younger players at Gala and bits and bobs, and then obviously progressed through over the years more full time. But yeah, absolutely. Like the skills, there's lots of people know strength and conditioning better than me. So it's not, you have to have knowledge, and you have to have understanding, and you have to have the ability to write programs and periodize and things like that. But that's not the difference. That's just the bread and butter. Like, the difference is relationships, understanding people, how they're motivated. If you can, I always sort of think, if you can get guys coming to work highly motivated and engaged in their development, it's almost irrelevant if your weights program is 5 sets of 3, 6 sets of 2, 5 sets of 5. It doesn't really matter. If that guy's engaged and motivated, he's got to get under that bar and he's got to rip into whatever you've given him, and he's got to adapt because of that. Now, potentially, maybe if you're working with an individual athlete at an Olympic level, this real fine granular detail of the programming might become the 1% difference, when you're talking about hundreds or thousands of a second between winning and losing. But in rugby, that little fine margin is not as fine. So you need to know what you're doing. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, if you can develop a skill set around communicating well, building relationships, you're a long way to getting success.
So if you were to go back and write the degree program, or you have an intern come in, what advice do you give them? What would be the thing you would point them towards?
Yeah, I've been quite. We have interns every year, and it's probably changed a bit over the years. Where at the start it was maybe a bit more around, let's sit down and talk programming. Here's how we write the weights programs, and I think there is. Don't get me wrong. That's like a key part. You got to know what you're doing. Don't get me wrong. But over the years and more lately, it's been standing in the gym with an intern, maybe asking them, "What are you seeing there?" And they might give you, something that they're seeing, and it's saying, "Okay, how you got to communicate that with the player? How you got to tell him that? Is he wanting your feedback right now? Is it something for later? Is it something to put away and talk to him later about? Have you given him enough praise? Have you rewarded him for doing positive things enough times before you go in there and say, hey mate, on that last power clean, you didn't get full hip extension. So a bit of a work on, something they've not done well. Have you balanced that off with 3, 4, 5 occasions prior to that where you've given him positive feedback? So he's now really receptive to what you're saying. He's not just like, oh, there's Davie Gray again having a go at me about this. He talked to me yesterday about that as well. And so those softer skills, I think, are really crucial. And I think it comes a little bit maybe through your own maturity and time in the saddle and finding out what works and doesn't work. But I certainly see some of the students coming through, they've got good theoretical understanding, but applying that in a way that people can relate to is probably the next step of their development. So trying my best to sort of help them do that.
So who helps you? Where do you get your feedback? Who's fine-tuning your skills? Who's looking at you and supporting you? I would imagine there's probably more than one person involved in that.
Yeah, I've done different things over the years. I'm really, really close to one of my colleagues, Dave Walrash, who we've worked together for a number of years, and we've got a really, really good relationship. We're good mates, but we deliberately challenge each other in what we're doing. So we see each other day in, day out. He sees me coaching, I see him coaching. He sees me presenting, I see him presenting. So we deliberately look at each other and try and give each other really accurate solutions or feedback on how we can get better, and we're conscious of that because you can be a little bit isolated. New Zealand's quite an isolated country, and then professional sport, there's not a lot of it in Wellington, so you can become quite isolated, and it's important that you continue on that journey of growth. So Dave's a really, really close influencer of mine. I'm always asking for feedback, whether it's Nick Gill with All Blacks might come in for a few days, asking him what he sees. If we have people who are passing through, might be visiting New Zealand, not in the current times, but previously, visiting New Zealand, invite them in, ask them what they've seen. Obviously, we're going on courses, but a lot of the things I'm looking at now are sort of more into communication, building connections, neuroscience, performance psychology, like wider than just the physical domain, and talking to different people. There's a guy I talked to the other day in Australia who's got a completely different background in the military, but he's into human performance. We talked to him for, fairly regularly, but talked to him the other day for an hour, just saying, this is what I'm up to. How's that compared to what you're doing? He's quite far into his PhD around performance under stress. So it's really interesting to talk to people who are looking at it from another angle and just thinking, nobody knows it all. So if you can get better by speaking to somebody or whatever, I'm more than open to that. I did a mentorship last year with a guy at the UK, Craig White. So got alongside him. We think it was over 3 or 4 months. We talked every second week. Helped me massively with my own personal growth, which has then made me a better coach at the back end of that. So hopefully it's helped the people I work with even more. So just always looking for ways to try and improve and get better, really.
Class, love it. Learning never stops. So you're only 0.65, is that right, with the Canes now? So you're more time on the turf and getting involved with the boys. So what happens with the rest of the time? You've just launched your new venture.
Yeah. So exciting. It's been a bit of a work in progress. So I've been doing a bit of work in the background with delivery and building the business. So I've launched a new business called FLOWSTATE, which is it's all around what I term human high performance. So it's a business that targets individuals, teams, organisations that may be in sport, but just as well they could be out of sport. So anyone who's really interested in maximising their human potential, whether that's of themselves, their staff, the team they're working with, key management in an organisation, anyone who's interested in maximising human potential, I'm trying to create a business that offers them coaching, mentorships, education, consultancy to help them achieve that. And it really looks at areas that I'm passionate about. So how do we go from preparation all the way through to performance? And at a human level, how can we set people up to perform at their best when it matters the most, really? And we can strip that right the way back and look at things. For example, how do we develop motivation, grit, willpower, resilience? How does that link into vision, values, your behaviours? And then as we start to sort of work through that continuum, how do we optimise performance? So again, this might not necessarily be in a sporting setting, but generally people have to perform in some domain. So that could be a student going into their exams. It could be somebody going for a job interview, their driving licence. It could be a big presentation. It could be public speaking. It could be any number of things. It could be a policeman going into a kind of violent situation. How does he cope with that stress? So how do we look at optimizing humans? So looking at things like sleep, nutrition, physical status, regeneration, and then all the way through to how do we optimize learning and skill acquisition, whatever sort of domain or work sector you're in. Are we optimizing how you're developing on a human-to-human level? How are we communicating? So are we communicating effectively? Are we having influence? Are we having persuasion? Are we being authentic? How's our body language? How's our tone of voice? All those subtle skills that immediately create some of the things we talked about earlier around trust and relationships. They're fundamentally set up by how you communicate. And then kind of right at the performance end of the spectrum, how do people go and perform in their performance domain, whatever that may be, and how do they really prepare for that in the long term and set themselves up for success? And then also strategies that maybe in the acute sense are required. So if the door opens and you're invited in for your job interview and suddenly you're a bit stressed and panicky, in that moment, have you got the tools and skill sets to bring your arousal levels back down and go and execute a performance? So when it really matters the most, you deliver your best. So the whole business is set up around this high performance in humans. and it's areas that I'm hugely passionate about. I think I have a really good understanding in these areas, and I'm also loving it because one of my big personal values is continued learning. So I'm getting to go out and look at, relatively complex and areas like neuroscience or performance psych, and it's quite intimidating. Sometimes you speak to people with a background in this, or you read something, or you listen to people talk about it. It's pretty complex, but I've started to think about it more as kind of like kids who do the drawings by numbers. They start on 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and at the end of the day, they've got this beautiful picture. And the more I kind of open my mind and learn, I'm starting to see really clearly the dots. So people always talk about having a vision, for example, but then when you look at the neuroscience around what drives motivation and pursuit of something, there's neurochemicals in your brain that are activated and released in the process of pursuing something. So you start to go, well, if that's happening in your brain at a sort of neurobiological level, it makes quite a lot of sense to have a vision, because you're naturally going to produce chemicals that are motivating to drive you towards your vision. And the more I've learned, the more fascinating it is. I've been connecting the dots. And as I say, I'll be continue to learn the whole time. And hopefully by the end of it, I can have this beautiful picture and help other people really to fulfill their potential and fulfill their dreams and their vision. Like, what are they trying to achieve? And I suppose a little bit like we talked about with the students coming straight out of university, a lot of people have the technical, tactical knowledge, but they don't necessarily have the other skill sets to support them maximising those skills. So the whole purpose of FLOWSTATE is to try and deliver all that and help people, whatever work domain they're in. If it's a parent trying to be a better parent, if it's a mum whose dream it is to, she might have maybe got 3 kids in her 40s and she's got a dream to run a 10K, but she needs help to get there. That's her Olympic gold medal. It's awesome. How can I help you get there? Or it could be a business executive, or it could be a student going for that job interview. And so there's huge potential, I think, to really make an impact. So I'm hugely excited. Sort of officially launched it last week. As I say, I spent about 3 days trying to figure out how to do an Instagram post, and eventually got there with the support of the family and some other people. And but hopefully it'll be really cool and really impactful and motivate me and motivate other people as well.
It looks awesome, and I'm not sure you could have timed it any better, because you've got Ardi Savia in the launch video, and then about 24 hours later, he's given that emotional speech as the All Blacks captain. So surely that's already a rubber stamp. This guy works.
Oh, exactly, mate. That's the impact of FLOWSTATE right there. All we need is 24 hours. Nah, it was awesome. We actually filmed that a while ago. Ardi was outstanding. Obviously, I've worked with Ardi for a good number of years, since he was a young fella. And I spoke to him. I was actually a bit nervous speaking to him, because I don't really like asking the boys to do too much. But I kind of was like, we could be really. It's massive for a new brand, isn't it, to have somebody like that? And I spoke to Ardi. He was awesome. We got an afternoon where we had a camera guy, and he filmed some stuff. And he's made the website, and the photos we took look outstanding. But it was amazing for Ardi. He's a busy man. He's got his own interests. He's got his own family, and he kindly gave up an afternoon to help me out. And good things come to good people. So obviously Ian Foster saw he'd help me out and gave him the captain's armband.
Yeah, another one to add to your list.
Exactly.
Got Ardi captaincy. And then you've got some great other endorsements on there from outside of rugby. It's obviously important to you that you're not pigeonholed as just a rugby guy. Yeah,
absolutely. I was really conscious, like my background mainly is in rugby, obviously, but as I sort of said before, the business it's wider than sport. It's not rugby at all. I may have rugby clients. They may be from football, maybe basketball, male, female, but I'm deliberately trying to push out into new markets. I want to look at, for example, the education sector, look at corporates, and it's not too. I'm not driven. You know, if people thinking, oh, the corporate, that's where the money is. It's not really what I'm after at all. It's the impact, and I just see people who. You talk to people around how they operate and how they function, and there's missing links, I think, in a lot of different places. And although it's probably a relatively niche market I'm targeting, and I don't think by any means it's for everyone, but for people who are driven to be their best and want to fulfil their potential, that's what I'm trying to support them with. And
right, here's one for you. Sorry to interrupt, but here's one for you, because this is something I'm passionate about and it frustrates the hell out of me. You've just said it's not for everyone, but it absolutely is, because it's learning. So what is it, and it's especially bloody adults, what is it that makes it not for them?
Well, I think it comes back to, we've mentioned the word ego already on this, and some people, for some reason, can feel threatened. They're comfortable where they are, or they're more comfortable with the discomforts that they know about. So if you're not very happy in your job, or you're not very happy in a relationship, or you're not very happy how you physically appear, there's a discomfort to that, but it's a known discomfort. Whereas to push yourself to try and fulfill what you really want, that means you've got to lean into a discomfort that's an unknown discomfort. And the unknown is often what people are scared of. So it's easier to live your life and just suck up the discomfort that you know is going to happen, the pain that you're in, not necessarily a physical pain, but it could be a psychological pain. It's easier to do that than it is to actually come out of that hole and try and push forward. And I think there's, I don't know, a lot of people are probably in that position, and that's why I don't think it is what I'm offering is for everyone. I agree with what you're saying, Itchy. Like the concept can apply to everyone, but not everyone's got to be look at that and have, that's for me. It's only got to be certain people, certain businesses, certain families, certain teams, and for me that's fine, because I'm really driven as well by, I want to create a business where there is a sense of team, and it's you and I working together to find the solution and make the performance better. It's not me coming into a work environment for a day and delivering and getting paid for it, but thinking at the end of the day, I made absolutely no impact there. They just had some budget available for a speaker to come in. That's not, if I get the sense of that client's not for me either. I want people who are genuinely chasing the fulfillment of their potential, and I'll be there and support them and challenge them and try and inspire them to go and fulfill that.
Thank you, and apologies for interrupting, but you're right, the concept's for everyone, but maybe the desire or the motivation is not there for everybody. Now, you can't have everything at the beginning. You can't leave uni and have everything you've got. Is there the more I've done these podcasts and I speak to people, none of them could have predicted where they've got to. Now, we've known each other for a long time. I can't imagine that when you left school, you would have had a clue that you were going to be sitting where you're just now talking about things you're talking about. I know I certainly couldn't have predicted. I'm in a place I didn't even know existed for a start. So what is it that's happened? Did you have a vision that was long term, or were you just dealing with the next thing in front of you?
Yeah, when I was younger, I probably just dealt with things as they came along, but it's interesting. I do remember I was sitting at mum and dad's house years ago. I might have been living at home, or it's just after uni or something. Mum and dad's place had kind of got their attic converted into a kind of office space. My dad was over there working on his computer, and I was doing something, and we were just talking. And he was like, "Have you got a 5-year plan?" And I was like, "No idea what that is." So I actually do remember sitting down, and I can't remember. It must have been must have been back in the sevens days, I think, 2002, 2003, something like that. And I want to be a full-time strength and conditioning coach and a professional, I'd probably put rugby team, and kind of wrote this thing down. And I don't know if you'd class it as a vision or not, but within 2 or 3 years, that had actually what happened. And there was a bit of chance and people and things like that. But more lately, as I've kind of matured and learned more, I've definitely got much more investment into having my own personal vision, business vision, my values. And I feel like I've kind of lived the process without really knowing how I've lived it. And like, I think a real good example was back in my sevens days. And, I sort of, as you know, I was just playing club rugby in Gala with your mates. And, every Saturday night, out drinking and having a good time and training Tuesday, Thursday. And then kind of out the blue got asked to go and play in the sevens. Go and train with the sevens. So we used to go up to Murrayfield on a Wednesday night and have an in-round. And then it started to get a little bit more serious, and used to go down to Jen and train with Chico Woods down in the Cinders, with like Mark Lee and Clarky Laidlaw, and there's a little group of us. And we ended up training. We used to play club on a Saturday. We used to train on a Sunday morning, hard, like old school speed endurance, 100s, 400s. This is on a Sunday morning. Then we'd train again Monday night, train club Tuesday, train at Murrayfield on a Wednesday, train your club Thursday, probably on Friday be off, play Saturday, go again. And it was funny because that sort of just started to change my behaviours and my habits. And then the next thing I knew, in sort of 2002, I got the phone call from Clarkstar Roy. He was a manager at the time, and he was like, "Oh, Dave, you've been selected for the Scotland Sevens to go to Hong Kong." And so I was kind of like blown away. I was like, "Geez, this is unreal." I'd seen videos years ago from a real close family friend, Keith Anderson, that he'd taken a South team there, and so next thing you know, you're kind of at Hong Kong, and I'm like, "Geez, I don't know if I should be here. I'm just like a club guy from Gala. It's ridiculous, and there's 30,000. You're playing New Zealand and stuff. It's like, oh my god." But then over that 4-year period, without probably knowing what I know now, my whole, I'd like to think people have recognised this as well, but my whole mindset changed by the end of my 4 years involvement with the Sevens. And people would disagree with this on a talent level, don't get me wrong, but I genuinely believed I was the best player in the world in my position at Sevens. And I didn't have any doubt about that, because I'd changed my lifestyle, my nutrition, I'd changed, hardly drank any alcohol, I'd trained so hard, I'd done extra skills work, I'd started to believe in myself, and I suppose I had like a vision. I used to think to myself, if I was a New Zealander, would I get picked in the New Zealand Sevens team? And that was, in 2002, I'd probably been like, do not be stupid, you wouldn't even get invited to the training camp, never mind. But by 2006, now obviously you never got to be able to know this, I genuinely believed I would walk into that team. And when you talk about sort of vision, I don't know if it was deliberate, but I've sort of experienced it. What happens. I didn't necessarily have a real clear vision, but I think I had ambition and a desire to do something. And to me, that's quite a nice little story of living it. And you could say the same around, how do you get from, Gala to the Hurricanes? Like, if you've sort of got a bit of a dream and a passion and you go hard and just take chances that come your way, and it can happen. So, I think it's just a bit of a reflection really. That.
But you take chances, but you make things as well. You mentioned it before about, there's maybe a little bit of luck along the way, but that you obviously showed a huge amount of determination. Now, you took yourself out of comfort zone as I did in a similar way, and lots of guys where we're from did, where you disappear for a summer and you play rugby in New Zealand. You pack a bag because somebody knew somebody and said, "Oh yeah, we'll have them." So what was that journey like, that experience like?
Yeah, mate, that was really cool. So a good mate of mine, Greg Brown, and I, we travelled over to New Zealand for about 12 months, and mate, we had a great time. We were just clueless. I remember the day before we left, Greg's dad, Johnny, was like, "Have you guys got visas?"
He definitely is clueless.
He was kind of like, "Have you boys got visas to get in?" We were like, "Visas?" We had no idea. And then luckily you never needed one. So, we got on the plane, and the the guy was like, "Do you want some beers?" And like, "How much?" And like, "Oh, it's free." So we're like, "Oh, sweet, let's just get into this," And but we had a great time in New Zealand. It really took us out of our comfort zone. Like we played, like I wasn't the greatest 15s player around, but it wasn't too bad as playing for Gala. Like we struggled to get a game in the second team at Petone in Wellington. The standard was phenomenal. There was about 5 or 6 games that season. The midfield for the Petone first team was Jason O'Halloran and Tana Umaga. It was unbelievable.
That's all right.
Decent. I could accept being in the second team those weeks, but we had a great time. Like anything, you just opened your mind, and you sort of move away from. I probably had a little bit of that small town mentality about me, maybe like the kind of big fish in a small pond almost. You sort of feel like you rule the town a wee bit, and coming back as a different person. I met my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. She came back over to Scotland, and you just have build new relationships and meet people and try new things, and it was a cool time. And Greg and I were here for about a year. He went back a couple of months early. I stayed on just to finish the rugby season. So it was awesome.
And you almost swapped like for like. You went from a club in Scotland to a club in New Zealand. There's so many similarities between the two places. And club rugby is kind of club rugby, doesn't matter where you are. But what did you see in New Zealand that sparked you? What did you see that you thought, actually, there's something here for me? Not necessarily New Zealand or rugby, but in yourself.
Yeah, well, I came back with a lot more belief. I think there's a lot of talent here, and it's competitive and it's physical. And I think what I loved was coming somewhere where nobody knew you, and because you're from Scotland, nobody rated you. So you had to prove yourself. You genuinely had to. I think even we might start in the third team, like come down on Tuesday night and go over there and train with the thirds, and you're kind of like, the thirds play for Gala, should be in the first team, but you just got to prove yourself and earn your stripes. Start to build your networks. You get stuck in with the boys. There's court sessions, the works. It's great times, but the rugby's certainly back then. It was serious. Genuinely there was a lot of good players. It was a different style of rugby. The grounds. You do get some wintry days, but generally the conditions favour moving the ball. Teams want to play that way. You've got some good players playing alongside you. I know guys like young players like Ricky Flutie and that were floating around the club. Namia Tialata, guys that go on to have great careers there just starting off, but man, they have talent. So I'd recommend it to anyone. Get out your comfort zone and go and learn and go and prove yourself. And then when I came back to Scotland, I felt I was a better player and probably a better person as well. I know after that, when some Kiwi guys would arrive at Gala, I was much more welcoming to them. I'd invite them round the house for dinner. Still got good mates like Tim Stack and Johnny Weston who came over and played at Gala and Melrose. And I probably wouldn't have done that, to be honest. If I'd never left Gala, I would have just been like, oh, they can fend for themselves, they'll be right, and stick with my own little crew. But so I think it really matured me as a person and helped my rugby and belief in myself, and it just helps you develop, I think. So yeah, it's a great thing to look back on and good times.
Being involved in grassroots in New Zealand, has that helped when you've then picked up a kid that walks in the Canes gym, or given you a greater understanding of where some of these guys have come from?
Yeah. Like New Zealand's still, our class New Zealand is still being quite rough and ready around the rugby scene. Like there's some pretty hard kids playing rugby that have come from some pretty hard backgrounds. And I remember, this was a few years ago now, I remember we had this Hurricane Schools camp, and the parents get invited. I think there's like 50 kids invited. And the last day they cut it to 25 or 30, and the parents are there to see their kids or to take the other kids home that don't make it. And one of the kids never got selected, so his old man just threw him in the boot of the car, and he was driving for about 4 hours home. It wasn't like a shower, it wasn't like to sit in the car because they didn't make the cut. So, it's pretty ruthless, and it's quite classic. But that's kind of it's not your typical New Zealand story, but it's not uncommon either. And players over here, they've had to work hard for what they get. They don't get much easy. And like we sort of said before, there's plenty of talent knocking around. So if you get a little bit above yourself or ease off a bit, somebody will literally come along and take your head off and step into your shoes. And so I think, having experienced a bit of club rugby, I've lived rurally when I first came over to New Zealand, lived up in Taranaki, so that's a completely different, a little bit like the borders, great people, loved it living up there, but it's different from living in a city like Wellington. So again, you start to see kind of like how the social dynamics, how the family situations might influence some of the kids, and obviously that's how you learn more about them and try and have those conversations where it's not just centered around rugby, but actually try to find a way to relate to people and talk about your family and their upbringing and your upbringing and what's common and what's different, and have respect and really sort of thrive on that. That diversity is really cool, and understanding some of the cultural backgrounds that maybe something that's really highly valued in a Pacific Island community may not be something you say in Scotland might not be offensive, but it might be to somebody from Samoa, for example, or how you conduct yourself if there's some traditional, maybe like a Maori haka. I've had to do 2 or 3 in my time here, and I've felt really uncomfortable inside doing them. But for example, the advice I got was, whatever you do, just go hard and show respect. And so you do that because you're like, I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to devalue something that's hugely important to the culture in New Zealand just because I'm uncomfortable. So, I think just, it helps, all that sort of understanding, and what you don't know, you try and find out. It all helps to build relationships with players regardless of their background and where they come from and where they go.
When you were on the Sevens circuit, I love speaking to people on the Sevens circuit, and it fascinates me. And having lived in Hong Kong, I kind of got a taste of it, but obviously not as a player, not as a coach. You were the road show. It was in Hong Kong 1 week, it was in Singapore, it was in Dubai, it was in South Africa, it was in America, it was wherever, Canada. How did that help give you a breadth of experience? I would imagine there's some people have spoken to said they only saw training ground and hotel, so they never experienced the culture. I know you got into some of the cultural activities in some of the places. How did that help? And I love hearing the stories about your best mate being a Samoan physio or a player from America. So how did that help with the development of Davie as the human?
Yeah. Look, I'll look back at my Sevens days as some of the best times of my life. I absolutely loved that period of my life, and I've got some really close mates that played a lot of rugby with. And again, it just sort of opened my eyes to different people, and I won't name any names, but there was people, for example, that when I played for Gala before I was involved with the Sevens, I thought certain players were idiots. I've never spoken to them in my life. Thought they were absolute idiots. We'd want to try and fight them at any opportunity, kind of. And then a few months later, best mates with them, because they're actually like really decent guys, completely different backgrounds from me, different personalities, different rolling in different circles, but great men. So we obviously spend a lot of time together on the road. I think just growing as a person, like having to perform at a high level, multiple times per day. Often it was 2-day tournaments, so 3 games each day. How in the Scottish team at that time, we like to think we went pretty well for our ability, but we had good results and we had bad results, and how you can park those up emotionally. So you might have a great result and beat whoever, Samoa, at midday, but you're playing England at 3:30, so you can enjoy it for a few minutes, but then you're sort of recovering, and then you're starting your prep for the next game. And on the other side, if you lose to Samoa at 12:30, well, you got to park that and get yourself ready to go, because we've got England at 3:30. You can't dwell on it. So that's certainly shaped a little bit. I'm not really a big one around the kind of emotional roller coaster of defeats and wins. The time that probably has gone out the window is when I lost the Super Rugby final. I was pretty down for a couple of weeks after that in 2015. But that Sevens experience, I think just performing in different environments, having to front up when you're not maybe feeling, maybe you're a bit unwell. Maybe traveling, you get bad stomachs or whatever, but you just got to front up and deliver. No point moaning about it. Pushing yourself hard through hard sessions. Can you, when you've got young blokes coming out the team, can you welcome them in, but then put a training performance out there to show them this is the standard and you ain't getting in because you ain't good enough, because this is the level. So you develop that kind of toughness, that resilience, the ability to absorb wins and absorb defeats and carry on, and then hopefully have some good times in Hong Kong as well and enjoy the local pub. It's quite good.
Is there, and again, one of the other things I've found is that the more I speak to people, they can remember maybe 4, 5, 6 tops of results in their life, but they can remember moments or people or feelings. Is there a moment from on the field in your Sevens career that you think that was flow state, but was there a time where you just thought it probably can't get any better than this? And obviously you would only think that on reflection, but is there a memory that jumps to the front of your head?
Yeah, I've got a couple of memories of, we played England at Wellington Sevens. Could have been 2005, I think. They had a really good team around that era. They might have even won the World Cup before that. They had a really strong team. I remember we beat them, and I remember playing that game and scored a try and loved it. And it felt almost, it was a little bit like flow. I can still remember now running a line, and it felt like kind of in slow motion and punching through the line and then running around behind the posts, and almost you can still see that kind of like misty atmosphere you get in stadiums when there's lots of people and stuff going on and fireworks or whatever, and that kind of smoky atmosphere. And I can still remember later in the game, Wally Brown doing this tackle when he grabbed the guy by his fingertips, clawed him down, got up, won the ball, got a penalty, and then Clarkie Laidlaw kicked the penalty. He actually kicked it to win the game, which is quite unusual, but that would be like a moment on the field. But outside that, I don't. I can still remember snippets of games, obviously, but what I remember really vividly, to be honest, is moments like in Hong Kong. I think the stadium will still be the same. Where you line up to go in the field, the tunnel kind of angles up the way. It's about maybe 20 or 30 metres, so you're sort of down a slightly lower level in this tunnel, but you can see the stands and some of the big games in Hong Kong under the floodlights. And I can still remember standing there with the team, and that feeling of I cannot. There's obviously nerves, but it's just that feeling of I cannot wait to get out there. And so some of my most vivid memories are around the changing rooms, tunnels, waiting to go out, rather than in the moment. And I think that's probably the emotional side of it. They tend to say that emotion and relevance tags it in your brain, and on the field, it's there's definitely chaos and you're doing your thing, but slightly calmer environment just outside the stadium. You're about to go into that kind of performance arena. It's pretty special, and if I could go back and sample that again, it'd be rip your hand off it. It's pretty cool.
I love it. Though that's for me the bit I miss. The playing was the playing, but it was the changing room. It was the bit where there was no cameras. We didn't have camera phones when we were in changing rooms as players, and the feeling after a game. Talking about defeat. That was where you saw boys sometimes at their absolute weakest point, but also sharing that victory. The changing room for me is the bit I miss the most. You still kind of get to be in there, but not as a player. Has there been a moment as an S&C coach with the Canes where you've just thought, this is the best place, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else on the planet other than here at this moment?
Oh, I've loved. I still do. I still love working for the team. I love the team and I'm passionate about it. And I've been fortunate, to travel the world with the team, and I've got great memories from our home stadium, Sky Stadium in Wellington. But memories, you're not even playing, but you might just run out with a kicking tee and you give it to whatever Bonnie Barrett or somebody a couple of years ago, and you might be in Cape Town or Argentina, and there's this kind of cauldron of atmosphere, and you're getting little snippets of it because you're kind of out in the field, but you don't have to take any hits. It's quite nice. You can just run back off the tee again. So it's actually the best of both worlds. You're getting a little bit, but it's different. I'm not sure if I could say it's ever matched the buzz of playing. There's something special, I think, about the changing room when you're actually going into battle and after it, defeat or win. There's something, that kind of band of brothers almost. But being S&C or being involved, you're pretty close in behind that. So we're still lucky. A lot of people wouldn't get that in their sporting career, probably might not sample that much. So to have sampled it as a player, both at Gala, around when we won the Cup in '99, we won Melrose Sevens in '99, we won Division 2 over this sort of 3 or 4 weeks. It was a great period. To then do similar sort of feelings on the Sevens circuit, and now for the last 10, 12 years, and even before that, when I worked in New Zealand Sevens and I worked with Taranaki, and you're in the change room, so you're still getting those hits. I'm pretty lucky, I've had lots of change room experiences, but I don't know if anything quite beats actually pulling the jersey on and going out there.
Class. We're almost out of time, but I'll get in trouble off Heppy if we didn't speak about Gala. So obviously a Gala boy, Gala Academy, Gala Rugby Club. You've mentioned 3 massive highlights there. I can remember the clubhouse after you came back with a cup. But Melrose Sevens, that squad, I think even had to play in the qualifying rounds for that tournament, didn't you? So what was that like?
Oh, mate, that was a great day. We were on just a roll at that point. We had a really strong team, some really, really good players, some great players. And it was probably one of the few times, I think, around Gala Rugby where there was actually felt like Gala represented more than just it almost represented the town. It was bigger than us, and it represented your mates who might be playing for the YM or the Star. It didn't really matter. There was just kind of everyone was behind the team, and it helps when you're doing well. But we had success. I think we might have won, as I say, maybe got promotion 1 week, then won Division 2 with a team that I think was probably strong enough to maybe win Division 1. It was a strong team.
It was unbelievable. That squad was unreal.
Yeah, phenomenal. And then I think the next week it might have been like a cup semi-final. The next week might have been Melrose Sevens. So we got there, and yeah, we played. I think from memory, we definitely played 5 games. I think we played the first game of the day against Stirling County. I remember I was hooking, and I'm sure Gordon Bullock was the Scotland hooker at the time, and he was playing. Whoever he played for, was it Stirling or Stumell or something? So we played the first game, and then we just had this belief in the team, and we ended up playing the 2 visiting teams from South Africa in the semi and the final. And I still remember, sort of like there's another kind of moment. I scored a try in one game, and I remember running and pointing, and all the Gala boys were sort of standing behind the post at the kind of town end of the green yards. But the winning the tournament itself was obviously awesome. It's a pretty prestigious tournament, and really proud to have done that. But really looking back, it was what it meant in the bigger picture. There was those moments in the change room with the 10 of us, and I'm sure Heppy would have been there and helping out. But then it was going down to the club room, and there was heaps of people there, and it was going back to Gala, and all your wider circle of mates are there, like guys like Big L and Squinty, and people that were playing in the second team. But there was members of the club. There was, it was phenomenal. It was just a great time, and as you say, the club rooms were buzzing. I probably remember more about that than the actual 5 games over the tournament. But that sport, I think, is what happens on the pitch is one thing, but if you create a little bit of, I suppose, inspiration maybe in some ways, and feel good for people and yourself, that's kind of what it's all about, really.
That's the flow state, Davie, I reckon.
The FLOWSTATE, mate, right there.
Does MD in Wellington call you Burger?
Oh, just a few. I've told a few people, but they always just forget. People just call me Davie, or a couple of guys call me Wallace after William Wallace. And I don't know. Most people still struggle with the accent. They don't know what I'm saying. And if you get called Derek, Devon, David, no, it could be anything. Just let it fly. So not many call me. Few folk call me Burger, but usually the Kiwi guys that have been over in Scotland.
And how nice is it when you bump into your mate Clark Laidlaw too? You doing unbelievably well in New Zealand, representing the borders.
Yeah, it's good times. So he was obviously with the Canes for a while, so we were hanging out every day. He lived just down the road from me. Now he's moved, or went back to UK and moved up to the Sevens, but in Tauranga. But I actually spent a lot of time with him over the last probably 3 months. I was helping him out a bit with our Olympic prep, which was really cool. Loved it. He's done a great job up there. The environment, the culture they've got at the Sevens is honestly it's first class. And so I was up there, sort of doing a couple of days a week with them, and flying up to the Mount, spending 2 days with them, coming back to Wellington, back to the Hurricanes, and going back up the next week. And then I had about 3 weeks on in Townsville, so I hung out with Clarkie quite a lot. I'm pleased that I like to think I've kept in better shape than him, though. He's definitely he's definitely had a tougher paper round than me. I think he's
the stress of being a head coach.
Oh, the stress of being a head coach. You always want to get into S&C, I reckon. It's too much stress in that head coach lark. But mate, he's done a great job. I love catching up with him. My wife Janine and his wife Karen are really close. Our kids are really close, so we see them now and again. They come down, we go up there, and it's really cool, you know. And I think also he would say the same. And having people that you know from Scotland without kind of being insular, it's quite nice. People in the same boat. You're quite a long way from home, and it's obviously a little bit challenging at the moment getting international travel done. So it's nice to have mates that go back. You know, Clark and I spent a lot of time on the Seven Circuit together, and we're good mates. So I always love catching up with the Dode. Is
he going to be a business partner in FLOWSTATE?
Nah, I don't think he's got enough cash to buy in, has he? We'll see. He's got some expertise anyway, so if I can't answer the problems, I've got a good network of people that I can help people out with. So
tap into him as a consultant.
Yeah, exactly. Take a little cut at the top.
Davie, I've absolutely loved speaking to you. Thank you so much. At the end of this, I asked the guest to finish a sentence, and I'm interested to see where this is going. I did tee you up a little bit, but you've not really had a huge amount of time to think about it. So, Davie Gray, the man of the Canes, the man in the flow state, for you, happiness is?
Yeah, you did stitch me up. Just tell me this question 10 seconds before we started here. For me, happiness is just feeling like I've given my best every day. So whether that's as a husband, a dad, a coach, a friend, if I kind of go to sleep at night and feel like I've tried my best, that's happiness for me.
I'm very impressed that you put husband first. Janine's going to be delighted with that. Well played. Well played. Well played. That, my friend, is flow state.
I'm always thinking of him. That's performance under pressure right there.
Class. Davie Gray, an absolute joy to speak to you. Thank you so much. All the best. I look forward to catching up with you somewhere at some point.
Pleasure, mate. An absolute great catching up, mate. I'll see you next time I'm back over in Scotland.
Cheers, Davie. Good man.
Cheers, mate.
Absolutely class. That man is in the flow state. Love speaking to him. Time has flown. That's over an hour and it feels like 10 minutes. Just slipped right back in, and great to see good people. I think he said good things come to good people. Well, it strikes me that some good things are coming his way. If you've enjoyed it, you can catch us on Apple, Acast and Spotify. Leave us a review, tell your friends, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast, and my happiness is egg-shaped. All the best. Stay safe. See you again.